Welcome back to the Dynasty Hotseat Devy show. As Mags say, the only Devy show out there that is a certified inferno. You are back with Jack and Phil. I'm going to hand straight over to the main man. Jack, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. It feels like a bit of a quiet period in the college football world, which is a bit sad. We haven't got too much to talk about and too much to really ponder and get our teeth into, which is a shame. But there's plenty of build up to the NFL draft that's been exciting. Some of those players that we ceremonially handed over to those dynasty shows and mags and the like. But it's still really intriguing, isn't it? Looking at where everybody's going to go. Mock drafts are hitting the shelves every single day. You can see a new mock draft from someone you respect or someone you don't respect, but it's really interesting to see where players are being projected and where they're going to land.
That's it. No, we've had the NFL Combine. We're now in kind of pro day season, aren't we, guys? Going back and all of a sudden measuring a couple of inches taller and running a couple of tenths of a second faster back at their home universities, where they kind of get that final send off on familiar turf. But no, it's great fun. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I have been absolutely swept up this year in writing up prospects and talking about these guys for a little bit longer and kind of taking my eye off the Devy ball somewhat. So I can't wait to get back into some kind of freshman tape over the next coming weeks for sure.
Yeah, it'll be good to dive into that, and we do have a bit of time to get really excited about those freshmen that are coming into not just our own programs, but into college football and where the big impacts are going to be. We will tackle that as a full series. We promise. It's one of our favorite things to do every year is look at those incoming freshmen and really plant our flags on the guys that we are backing to be a big riser on your Devy roster. So we will get there. We've just got plenty of time to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said at the start, we're in quite a quiet part of the year, really, but there is a little bit of news. It's slowly drip feeding its way through. And I thought we'd start with something that particularly our UK-based followers will be dead happy to hear. And that just involves the Union Jack Classic. Obviously, week 3 in September of this coming season, September the 19th to be precise. Wembley is going to play host to the first annual Union Jack Classic between Arizona State and the Kansas Jayhawks from the Big 12. We're both going. We are absolutely thrilled to get our eyes on those two teams and to watch some Big 12 action. But the biggest news is yesterday, the kind of people behind the Union Jack Classic confirmed that is going to be an ongoing series for at least the next 3 seasons. So not only are we going to get the Big 12 game this year, but we're going to get 2 subsequent games in forthcoming seasons, which is absolutely brilliant news for college football fans. And I just implore, if you are watching this show, go to this one. Let's pack out Wembley. Let's make it a really, really big deal. Because the bigger we make this one, dare I say it, the better the products will be in year 2 and year 3 because of who they might look to bring across. It's already rumored that they're going to look to stretch it beyond the Big 12 into one of perhaps the other major conferences. And again, success dependent. The chap in charge of the Union Jack Classic has plans afoot to take games to Europe as well. So if you sat watching us in Germany are the next one on their radar. Obviously, the ACC already has its kind of regular jaunt with Dublin and Ireland. So yeah, there's loads going on. It is a great time and great news for college football fans here in the UK.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think I echo what you say. If we can convince those organising and the universities that are kind of interested in how this can benefit their, let's be honest, revenue and market interest, then we're likely to get a better product. It's different to the NFL. There's so many teams that could come to the UK for a Union Jack Classic game and therefore the rest of Europe that it could be easy for us to get smaller brands. Now, that's not what we're saying about the Union Jack Classic coming up this season. We've got 2 great programs with some incredible history, some great players that have come from Arizona State and Kansas. But if the spectacle is seen to not be quite as good as it could be, we basically just want to make sure that it is as good as possible. We can get bigger teams in the future. I know fans in the UK have been a little bit frustrated by the quality of the NFL teams that have been sent to the UK when we've seen other destinations in Europe get some pretty good games and some better teams and better matchups. So let's make sure that we can do all that we can, which is admittedly very little, to get the biggest brands over here. And you can dream of seeing your favourite team in London if you are based in the UK. If you're based in London in particular, nice and easy to get to. Or even pick up a new team. If you are new to college football, you enjoy Devy, you enjoy Dynasty football, and you're kind of dipping your toe into the college football world, this is a great opportunity to come along, choose a team. Like, there are so many teams to choose from that you could follow in college football.
Oh, sure.
Easy for yourself. Just come to this game and pick one of the 2 and get fully on board. There's no worse reason. There's not many better reasons to pick a team. If you can actually get to see the team that you are cheering for in person, that's as good a reason as any for those of us who don't have family or collegiate ties to any of the teams that we follow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting as well that you say about taking on one of the 2 teams that are coming as a great first choice. I thought it was really interesting. There's a quote here by Thomas Hennessy, who's the COO at Arizona State, and he said, "We're very confident of selling out Wembley." But it's quote, "I will say this with humility, we're going to have to earn every ticket buyer." Like, they're well aware that the product isn't the NFL, and that, you know, all the things we've talked about, bigger benches, younger players, a little bit of a kind of wilder ride in terms of what you can expect in terms of the products on the field. Like, they know it, and I think they're going to go all out to make sure that it's an absolute spectacle. So yeah, I really encourage you to be there.
Yeah, I am super excited to see what they're going to do in terms of the build-up. And I know there are plans already afoot for not tailgating as such, which college football does in a very different way to the NFL, but some incredible things are being planned to try and recreate not just the game, but the game day experience. And you know, with that being a destination game, hopefully that's a weekend full of experiences that the NFL maybe hasn't delivered in London. I would say tailgating is really just flattened out for the NFL. So yeah, we'll see. So great news for us in the UK. The other bit of news that we're going to touch on is kind of a follow-up from last episode. So we spoke about how Trinidad Chambliss had basically been granted a preliminary injunction, and it looked all set to be the starting quarterback for Ole Miss in 2026. However, the NCAA, in all its mighty wisdom or lack thereof, have decided to challenge this preliminary injunction with the Mississippi courts, so the Supreme Court of Mississippi. This is an interesting move from the NCAA. Phil and I, we were chatting about this before the show, and we don't really understand why they are so desperate to kick Trinidad Chambliss out the sport. I feel like he's the kind of rags to riches story that certainly in the UK we love to see. We love to see an underdog succeed, and what is almost an administrative error has led to this situation where Trinidad Chambliss doesn't have a, by NCAA standards, legitimate reason to be playing this season, but the courts obviously disagree. I don't imagine they'll win this appeal based on previous explorations of the High Court or the Supreme Court, sorry, by the NCAA. But it just puts a little spanner in the works. Is Trinidad Chambliss going to be the starter? What does that mean for Deuce Knight? So our previous episode is a hot topic, so go and check that out. We spoke about both those quarterbacks prospects for this season and for your Devy rosters. So check that out. None of that has changed, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all it does is We've already said we gave you our advice in the last show, and we're not going to tell you it again. Now you can go back and click on that one, go watch it. All right, but we told you what we do with Trinidad Chambliss. Particularly with this latest little bit of news, you want to watch your league mates carefully and look to take advantage because there's an opportunity now with this latest little wrinkle for him to perhaps not be where we said last time out, potentially, depending on what happens next. But yeah, sometimes no news is good news. There's obviously no final decision. And the longer that waits, the longer you can wait for someone to overpay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then,
go on. No, go after you.
In this week's edition of the news, we do have something a little bit off topic, and that is because at very short notice, I have been offered a charity spot at the 2026 London Marathon on the 26th of April, which is something I'm really excited about. I've been in training to do a marathon, but not the London one because it's so difficult to get a spot. But last minute, I've been given the opportunity to run for an amazing charity that I actually had the privilege of working for over 8 years. And this charity is called Christians Against Poverty, and they work in partnership with local centres across the UK, basically to end poverty. That is their aim, that is their mission statement. And so CAP offer free confidential debt help, budgeting support and advice through local UK-based churches. And basically, I am using my platform as your second favourite Dynasty Hotseat Devy show host to appeal and ask if anyone out there would be willing to sponsor me and help raise money for an amazing cause, and also laugh at my training and race day performance, shall we put it. I'll be giving some updates over the course of the next few weeks. So there is a QR code on screen right now. You can have a look at the giving page that I have set up for the marathon. We will put links on the description of the YouTube show, and we'll be posting these out on our social media accounts as well. So if out of the goodness of your heart you are keen to support me and to support a charity that is really determined to end poverty here in the UK through a whole holistic vision to meet with people in person, to chat through their scenarios and to find solutions, then please do scan that QR code, visit this page, donate and gift aid it if you can. If you need a little bit of extra motivation, which is absolutely fine, we can all like to give, but also take part in something. We at the Dynasty Hotseat Devy show are offering 2 things that you could sign up for. So with a £10 donation towards Christians Against Poverty, you can win yourself or earn yourself. You don't have to win it. Anyone that gives us £10 can choose between a Devy roster MOT, where you send us your Devy roster, that's your NFL side and your Devy squad. We will have a thorough think through and comb through your team, give you our thoughts on your roster build, give you some thoughts on what you could do in the upcoming Devy drafts and rookie drafts, if you give us an idea of who is still available in your rookie drafts. And we will give you some advice on next steps to make your team a title challenger. So if you want a Devy roster MOT, just donate £10 and then send us a screenshot on X. You can obviously send that to myself, is probably the best person to do it. If you can send that to @JackCDCTT on X, then we will get that included in one of our upcoming shows. Now, if you are interested in college football and you maybe don't need a Devy roster MOT, but you would be interested in testing out what college fantasy football looks like, as we've spoken a few times about campus to canton leagues and pure college fantasy football leagues, we are going to be running some college fantasy football best ball leagues. Now, these are excellent introductions to the world of college fantasy football because they're best ball, so you're not having to set a lineup each week and navigate the multiple bye weeks and ridiculous number of teams that you're drafting from. But they do give you the opportunity to still use the waiver wire, so you can drop players and pick up new ones. You're not kind of drafting and done. So there's still a little bit of involvement during the season if you want to, but they are an excellent opportunity to dip your toe into college fantasy football, get an eye on those players. We say Devy players, but really they're CFF players first and foremost. But those guys that maybe are unheard of by the rest of your Devy league that are productive in college, and we've seen some of those guys become really valuable Devy pieces. I think in RJ Harvey in particular, he's the guy that stands out as someone who was a stud in college, really productive guy who slipped under the radar and kind of took off. Well, really around the time of the combine, and was drafted pretty highly by the Broncos. So if you are interested in that, send us a £10 donation, send us a screenshot, and let us know that you would like to sign up for one of the Dynasty Hotseat Devy Show College Fantasy Football Best Ball Leagues. And that's enough self-pandering about the London Marathon. It will be tough. It will be tricky. I will love and hate it, I am sure. But come and support me, come and cheer me on. That would be amazing, and raise funds for a truly brilliant charity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Jack. And it's not self-pandering at all. You're working hard, you put in the work in, and the listeners are going to get something back if they support you. So absolutely well worth it, mate. Well done.
Cheers. So on to the meat of tonight's dinner, and that is helmet scouting. So tonight we want to basically have a look at what this phrase means. It's one that's kind of banded around NFL circles, really. We think about people who are analyzing their dynasty rosters and looking at who the players are coming into their rookie drafts. They're going to know the names of the big schools. Mm-hmm. They're going to know the names of the schools that have produced players in the past that have been successful for fantasy. And we want to analyze what this is, first of all, how trends have kind of changed over the last few years, but mainly we want to explain how we, and therefore how you, can exploit helmet scouting to your benefit on your Devy squads and on your dynasty rosters. So I thought what I would do is I would research and pitch to Phil a certain criteria of player and school that has historically produced these guys that is, maybe you could be accused of saying it's helmet scouting, but they've got some proven track record of producing a particular type of player for the NFL. We're going to look at one school that is known for producing quarterbacks, one for running backs, one for wide receivers, and we've even got a tight end school in there. So if you are on X and you are fighting over who is wide receiver university and who is QBU, these are our thoughts on what has actually been productive in the NFL, and we'll pose a few questions on the back of it. Does that sound all right, Phil?
Sounds great. I'm going in blind. This is your baby. I am going to respond. I'm learning at the same time as the listeners, and I will be offering my opinion live.
Fabulous. Yes, I've completely hidden this from Phil in the build-up to tonight's episode. So we're going to start with the most valuable position in fantasy, and that is certainly for Superflex leagues, that is the quarterback position. Now, no school has produced more first-round quarterbacks in the last 10 years than Oklahoma. Okay, so we're going to run back from 2010 to modern day.
Yep.
Because 2010 was so long ago. I look at some of those players that they've produced. So in 2010, Oklahoma pushed Sam Bradford into the league. Round 1, pick 1 to the Rams. In 2013, I must warn you, there are some stars and some duds in this list. In 2013, Landry Jones out of Oklahoma, went in the 4th round, 115th pick overall to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then comes the big fantasy impact run.
Yeah.
You got 2018 Baker Mayfield, round 1, pick 1 to the Browns. 2019 Kyler Murray, round 1, pick 1 to the Arizona Cardinals. And 2020 Jalen Hurts, round 2, pick 53 to the Eagles. Now, all 3 of those guys have been studs in particular seasons. Some of them have been studs for fantasy over several seasons. We've obviously had the news that Kyler Murray is being released by the Arizona Cardinals this week. So a mixed bag in terms of his NFL production and longevity in the league. But what I wanted to pose to you, Phil, is this is the biggest example of a quarterback university, as people like to argue on X. This is a school that has produced top end fantasy quarterbacks, like QB1s in our fantasy leagues over the last few years. But the last quarterback they put into the league was in 2020. And we haven't seen another school do this historically. I mean, USC maybe before maybe you and I were watching college football. But why do you think we don't see quarterbacks being produced kind of regularly by a top school? And what does that mean for Devy? Does that just kind of reinforce our ideas that quarterbacks are the hardest position to evaluate and also the hardest to live up to their hype?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, and I want to focus on the recent run of names. So when you go from Baker to Kyler, and then obviously Jalen Hurts was a slightly different situation because he wasn't drafted and developed, if you like, or recruited and developed at Oklahoma. That run there focuses on the elite traits of a recruiter and head coach. And I think the journey of the recruiter, the coach, massively dictates, because, I mean, you could argue Caleb Williams went to Oklahoma, but he went to Oklahoma to play for Lincoln Riley and has then obviously moved to USC when Lincoln Riley moved to USC. Spencer Rattler is also in the NFL. Was recruited by Oklahoma again to play for Lincoln Riley. So this is people following the coach, not necessarily the program as such. And you've seen that as he's moved. And it might also be why that situation has slowed up slightly. In terms of what it means for Devy, look, there's long been our argument about, do you chase 5-star freshmen and end up with a Spencer Rattler, or do you wait to see traits emerge? And again, Jalen Hurts is a bit of a funny one to use as an example there, because Jalen Hurts may well have been helmet scouted as an Alabama quarterback. Mm-hmm. High recruit, flashed early, obviously then went through his kind of turmoil in and out of the lineup under Nick Saban with Tua. They're kind of back and forth for a long while before Hurts finally realized he wasn't going to be the first choice at Alabama under Saban, so transferred to Oklahoma. But these guys, what the point I'm trying to make about Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick who had all the intangibles that we've talked about a lot for the guys that we do like to target: the time on task, the kind of games played, the metrics in terms of wins, and obviously he has the elite rushing upside as well, which we knew would be good. We didn't know exactly how good, I suppose. But yeah, this for me just reiterates not scouting the helmet, but if anything, it just reinforces this idea of looking for the guys with the traits and with the acumen, and be willing to spend lower rather than splashing out on those 5 stars. Ultimately, there's only going to be a handful of them that make the league every year, so why not spend that capital more wisely?
Yeah. I think Oklahoma are always going to be able to attract highly ranked recruits at the quarterback position, regardless of the head coach, and obviously the coaching staff change across that period of time that we've looked at, and this will be the same for the other schools and the other positions we look at, things don't stay the same. Oklahoma is an established top tier program within college football, and so they're always going to be able to attract highly rated recruits, whether they're worth the investment, especially at the quarterback position. I think it is showing that's not the case. It's not worth investing all of your capital in a quarterback just because they go to Oklahoma. Now, if your league mates disagree, if your league mates are a little bit less experienced in the world of helmet scouting and they have seen this run, they are well aware of the quarterbacks that have been producing for the NFL side, then that's something you can take advantage of. And we will touch on the coaching changes and following a coach a little bit later in the show when we look at the wide receiver position. I think that'll be an interesting one to dive into.
What I would say about Oklahoma is Oklahoma are currently one of those new trends of schools in terms of how they're structured to cope with NIL and the kind of business model behind the school. Now, they brought in Jim Nagy, obviously of Senior Bowl fame and Senior Bowl, long-time kind of director of the Senior Bowl, to run almost be like their GM. And it's a strange concept, a GM, because obviously traditionally in college football, you had your head coach, who was the driving force and the lifeblood. And Brent Venables is obviously a fantastic defensive-minded head coach. But Jim Nagy was brought in to run the front office and the business side of that operation in a way that is more similar to what's been done at an NFL level. And it will be really interesting to watch how he continues to recruit and how they go out and target their quarterbacks moving forward. Are they going to invest heavily in recruitment and freshmen, or are they going to look to the transfer market and kind of get those guys in through the portal?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. John Mateer, obviously the latest example of an Oklahoma quarterback who has come with his head coach through the transfer portal. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when he moves on and Oklahoma are appointing their first quarterback that hasn't transferred in, or whether they go and appoint a different one that didn't come with the coach. So an interesting scenario to pay attention to. Now, Phil, I'm going to treat you, because the next school we're going to look at is your beloved Alabama Crimson Tide. And I don't think I'm alone in noticing a trend where Alabama have produced some brilliant fantasy football running backs, but not just that. What happens to these guys when they hit the league is almost not Alabama's fault, if for want of a better word.
Sure. Yeah.
So we're not just looking at running backs who have been studs for fantasy. We're looking at running backs that Alabama have put into the league with good draft capital. Okay, so we're going to throw our minds back to 2011. 2011, Mark Ingram was drafted to the New Orleans Saints in the first round. And this is in a period of time where running backs didn't really go in the first round, when pick number 28. The year after, 2012, I'm so used to 2020s. I feel so old. 2012, Trent Richardson.
Yep.
Round 1, pick 3 to the Cleveland Browns. Pick 3. 2013, Eddie Lacy, round 2, pick 61 to the Green Bay Packers. 2015, TJ Yeldon, round 2, pick 36 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this is a guy who was so exciting in college. So he's not someone who really lit up the NFL by any stretch of the imagination, but was so exciting in college. So just to give him a little bit of a shout, there's a reason he was drafted in the second round. 2016, you've got Kenyon Drake in the third round, pick number 73 to the Miami Dolphins, and the big man, Derrick Henry, second round pick number 45 to the Tennessee Titans. 2018 is your next running back drafted out of Alabama. Now, like Phil pointed out earlier, these players are all players that went directly from Alabama as their last school. So there's no players that were developed and recruited by Alabama are not included in this if they transferred somewhere else and went to the league after that. But 2018, the lesser known Bo Scarborough, round 7, pick 236, nearly Mr. Irrelevant to the Dallas Cowboys. 2019, a double whammy. Damian Harris in the 3rd round, pick number 87, went to the New England Patriots. And Josh Jacobs, of course, went in the 1st round at pick number 24 to the Raiders. Skip a year, we've got 2021, Najee Harris, round 1, pick number 24 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is going to be a guy that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, because Najee Harris didn't feel like a 1st round pick to me really at all at that stage, but maybe helmet scouting helped him boost his profile. I'll be interested to get your thoughts on that in a little bit. 2022, Brian Robertson Jr., 3rd round, pick number 98 to the Commanders. 2023, Jahmyr Gibbs, round 1, pick 12 to the Detroit Lions. Now you're firmly in your top tier of fantasy running backs. And then 2024, Jace McClellan. This one hurt because he was someone I was so high on, but injuries absolutely ravaged his career. But he was still drafted on day 3 in round 6, pick number 186 by the Atlanta Falcons. There's your last, plenty of years, since back to 2011. There's your history of Alabama running backs. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of high pedigree names there, but there are some that didn't work out in the NFL. Some that maybe haven't taken off for fantasy either. What are your thoughts on what has happened at Alabama over that period of time? That's over a decade of running backs being drafted high in the 1st round, as high as pick number 3. How do you feel that has shaken out? And do you think Alabama has a legitimate reason to be viewed as a place where running backs can develop well, and therefore we can take advantage of that in Devy, especially around the time of the NFL draft when these guys might get picked?
Sure. So there's a couple of things, isn't there, in it? And it's testament to how the game has changed again in the last 15 years. Because what we're talking about here is we're talking going back to 2011 and the kind of Mark Ingram and that first class that Saban brought through, if you like. There wasn't a transfer portal as we know it now. If a player wanted to leave once he committed to a school, it was incredibly difficult for them to do so. So what you tended to find was Alabama could stock the pipeline, if you like, with an elite recruit every year. And we've spoken about it before. The kind of concept at Alabama for a long time was the guy just had to wait their turn. Like when you think, even as a freshman, Derrick Henry, the size he was, the speed he had, like he had to wait his turn whilst others got the run first. It was just the way it worked, and Alabama until the team with Tua and that kind of elite receiving core of Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, and Devonta Smith. Until then, Bama always had an offense with a run-first identity. So it was a place that the elite recruits did want to go. They wanted to play for Saban. They were prepared to wait their turn. They kind of knew that was how it worked. They couldn't just transfer out at a whim. There was just that kind of consistent pipeline. But things have changed. And the reality now is a recruit. NIL has changed the landscape of where people might want to go first. Some people like the idea of going to Alabama, getting a year in the program, in the system, saying they were an Alabama recruit, and then taking their services elsewhere rather than wait their turn because of the money that they can make to actually be on the field and performing now. So it's changed. It's just, the nature of it has changed. Obviously, the last couple of years, and for the first time in a long time, you would say that Alabama's run game this past season was nothing short of dire, in spite of some highly recruited players in the backfield, which just again goes to show the peril of helmet scouting. If you kind of bought into some of that Alabama room just because they were high-profile recruits, yeah, you kind of been left with egg on your face slightly. However, I will let you in on a little secret. This year is the year to go in on an Alabama freshman running back because Xavier Crowell might be, he's in a 1-2 for the best running back in the country in terms of high school recruits. There's him and Savion Heiter, who has gone to Michigan. Heiter has a skill set which actually terrified Justice Haynes and made Justice Haynes move to Georgia Tech. But obviously, Crowell's a slightly different running back to Heiter, but they are both elite recruits. And people in Alabama are more excited about him, and there's been more noise made about him than many running back recruits in several cycles at Alabama. He's definitely a name to watch, and I can't wait to get into the tape and confirm my own biases.
Yes. I don't think there's any question that we are going to confirm those biases. He looks electric, really exciting prospect. For those Georgia fans amongst you watching and listening to our show, please don't be offended. Georgia also has an incredible pedigree of producing running backs to the NFL. And it would be a really similar, interesting exercise to look over those who have gone to the league in the last few years and what helmet scouting Georgia running backs has done for your Devy rosters as well. But I think it'd be a similar picture, and I wanted to treat Phil to make sure we definitely spoke about his team.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Just in terms of how difficult it was, like, we've talked about how easy it is for guys to come into schools and leave schools again now in absolutely no time whatsoever. There's a maybe controversial take here because we all remember how good LaDainian Tomlinson was, but I'm going to say maybe a top 3 fantasy football running back of all time. Alvin Kamara was also on Alabama's books. Now, obviously, he was recruited in 2013. He sat in that crowded room behind Derrick Henry, TJ Yeldon, Kenyon Drake. So after his redshirt freshman season, he transferred out. But the only route for him to go and then keep playing was to go the JUCO route. He couldn't transfer to another Power 5 program. He had to go the JUCO route. So he spent a year playing JUCO before transferring back in and being eligible to play at Tennessee. And then obviously 2017, he gets drafted and goes on to be a fantasy goldmine as a 3rd-round pick for the best part of a decade, who is finally just starting to maybe show that wear and tear and stop being considered a tier 1 running back asset in Dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. What a player he's been for your fantasy rosters over the last few years.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to wide receivers. And of course, again, there is consideration for other schools here. LSU, notable name. But we're not going to look at LSU because it's our show. And I decided that we're going to look at the real wide receiver you, and that is Ohio State. And so over the last 11 years, we've had an unprecedented run of wide receivers come into the league from Ohio State. We're only going back to 2015 for this because, well, actually, we can go back to 2009 where Brian Hartline himself entered the NFL out of Ohio State. But we'll start properly in 2015. So Evan Spencer, 6th-round pick 187, went to Washington. Obviously, they were Redskins at that stage, now the Commanders. And then Devin Smith went in the 2nd round, pick 37 to the New York Jets. In 2016, after the national championship winning side from 2015, Michael Thomas entered the league in the 2nd round. He was picked number 47 by the New Orleans Saints. He was kind of overdrafted isn't the word because he became a really successful NFL player, but he went higher than a lot of people kind of thought he would. His college profile wasn't as strong as ridiculous as that sounds, because his size and speed and strength was so good for the NFL when he actually got there. But yeah, Michael Thomas in 2016. In 2017, you had now this guy. Not many people will have heard of Noah Brown. Went 7th round pick, 239 to the Dallas Cowboys. This guy was on the receiving end of the pass that made me an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. That game in 2017, when Ohio State came back from 4 scores down against Penn State, Noah Brown caught the winning touchdown in that game from JT Barrett. So much love. Had to mention him. But the big wide receiver from that year, who actually ended up a bit of a hybrid player and was in college as well, like a hybrid running back. Wide receiver Curtis Samuel went in the second round, pick number 40 overall to the Carolina Panthers. And in 2019, you start to get some of the big names. So Terry McLaurin was taken late. This is a guy who bloomed kind of in his senior year at college and then continued to grow at the NFL level. So McLaurin went in the third round, pick number 76 to Washington, and Paris Campbell actually went around earlier in round 2, pick number 59 to the Colts. Swing
and a miss.
A swing and a miss, yes. A guy who had all the tools, couldn't put it together in Indy. 2020 had another favorite wide receiver of mine for how productive he was in college, but has flamed out of the NFL. That's KJ Hill, went round 7, pick 220 to the Chargers. 2022, here we go. We've got Chris Olave, round 1, pick 11 to the New Orleans Saints, and Garrett Wilson, round 1, pick 10 to the New York Jets. It's a combo to be rivaled. 2023, Jackson Smith-Njigba, round 1, pick 20 to the Seattle Seahawks. 2024, Marvin Harrison Jr., round 1, pick number 4 to the Arizona Cardinals. Your opinions on him may differ, and he may be seen as a flop, bearing in mind how high he went, but my goodness, the prospect and the college tape was absolutely insane. And then 2025, Emeka Egbuka, round 1, pick number 19 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is a strong pedigree of not just good wide receivers for fantasy, those are some top-end scorers for your fantasy teams. You think over the last few seasons, Emeka Egbuka, the first half of the most recent NFL season, wide receiver in all of football this year. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, Michael Thomas, they've all produced wide receiver 1 seasons for you. There's some top quality here. So my question really is based on the aforementioned Brian Hartline, who is leaving Ohio State. How do you think that impacts the wide receiver run that we've seen from Ohio State? Because I would argue that this is one of the positions and one of the schools that we've seen consistently year on year, 2021 aside. We've had 4, 5, we've had 6 out of the last 7 years. We've had a wide receiver of note come out of Ohio State. That is consistency, especially considering those wide receivers have different skill sets.
Yeah.
So how do you think Brian Hartline leaving impacts Ohio State, and do you think we need to dismiss the helmet scouting idea of Ohio State wide receivers going forward?
So first and foremost, you've alluded to it. It's an unusually large number of elite wide receivers being put into the league in the last decade. It starts with recruiting, and nobody worked harder in that kind of recruiting kind of area than Brian Hartline. An outstanding coach, but just as good a recruiter. The thing is, success breeds success. And, for all the names you've mentioned, let's talk this year, because we're going to extend that run to 2026 with Carnell Tate. We're going to extend it to 2027 with Jeremiah Smith. And, first eligible in 2029, you managed to secure through Hartline moving out and taking the USF job. You managed to recruit and maintain Chris Henry Jr., one of the, again, most outstanding prospects in the country. Yeah, it was by the skin of the teeth. But the very fact he stayed shows that the program is in a position to be financially lucrative and competitive in this new market. But there is losing Heartline's a blow. I mean, let's just tell it how it is. It is a major, major blow. But I think there is track record enough now to know that the program and being synonymous with the program can help a prospect as well. And I think that's going to stand them in good stead for a while. And yeah, I mean, it's an unbelievable run. Worryingly, probably for the first, I say worryingly, you always manage. It's like any big program, isn't it? Any big program, any big team, any big school, by and large, they tend to keep the ones they really want to keep. If they want to keep you, they find a way to keep you. So yeah, it's a concern that Quincy Porter left in the portal this year, has gone to Notre Dame. Remind me, why can't I think of the chap who went with him again from exactly the same room? Marlon Graham. Yeah, of course. Yep. So two guys from that 27 and 28 class have decided to leave when Heartline left. But again, they had perhaps not seen the field and maybe weren't quite making the expected progress you'd expect. But they keep the guys they want to keep, and securing Chris Henry and managing to keep him through that very close, unusual recruitment towards the end is brilliant. You've got to look at the offense that runs there as well. And obviously he went from wide receiver coach to OC. But Ryan Day likes his kind of pass heavy spread offense. There are touches for those wide receivers. They create good, they let the wide receivers run NFL style routes. That's the other thing that, when you go and if you watch Ohio State's offense, it's not just about the talent of the recruit. It's about how they are trained to play. And it goes again with this kind of idea of why people are often so lazily critical of the Tennessee guys and why people have written Chris Brazzell off before he's ever taken an NFL snap because they just run go balls. Well, yeah, that scheme is an awful lot to do with it. And we have seen some difficulty in translation for those guys, but not at Ohio State because they have been trained to run NFL style routes. They give a player to show chances to show deep threat and route running skills. And now, dare I say it, they're starting to recruit QBs that can keep up with the pedigree of the receivers they've got as well, which wasn't, and I'm being very respectful here, wasn't always the case at Ohio State.
No, it really wasn't. It really wasn't. The jury is still out on whether they can produce an NFL-ready quarterback after the Justin Fields debacle with the Bears and the Jets, but and the Steelers. Gosh, he's flamed out. Oh, that hurts. But yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how Ryan Day responds. So last season, if you speak to Ohio State fans, you'll see a frustration with the way that the offense was run in a very in a style that doesn't really suit the wide receivers quite as well as previous years have. They they'd let the clock run. They condensed games and reduced the number of snaps, which was totally to their detriment. So I'm really interested to see how Ryan Day changes that in 2026.
Is that a little bit more though to do with the emergence as well of Bo Jackson?
Potentially, but Bo Jackson wasn't being lent on in those early games because he hadn't established himself. CJ Donaldson was running the ball fairly inefficiently to start the season. Ryan Day seemed to suggest in a lot of his comments that he was kind of holding the team back for the playoffs, trying to keep them healthy, trying to keep them fit, but they couldn't then flip the switch when it came to that playoff run and that game against Miami. They couldn't suddenly go tempo and it didn't work. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll also be interesting to see what the wide receiver room looks like this season and which players you can kind of plant your flag on outside of Jeremiah Smith. Like you say, Chris Henry Jr. is a really excited prospect, 5-star incoming wide receiver. Outside of the two of those, you've got Brandon Inniss, very reliable, but certainly hasn't lived up to his 5-star recruit. I'm not really sure who's going to shine through outside of those three players.
Sure. I think Brandon Innes is going to be an interesting watch because he's got that inside outside versatility. Obviously, as so far with the players around him, often found himself lining up on the inside. And you know, I think he could be in for a sneaky good year because he's a pro's pro. And again, let's be honest, there will have been opportunities for him to leave if he at all felt the frustration of a lack of snaps and a lack of targets. You know, a player of that pedigree would have had the opportunity to move. And I can't help but think like maybe now's the season. And I tell you what, I mean, I took quite a few shares anyway. I took shares of him and Tate when they came out together. But in leagues where I don't have him, I think I'd be interested. I think he's going to get a profile bump. I think he's going to get a target bump. And I'd be looking to go out and see whether I can get him because he's almost an afterthought for people now, and people might just be willing to cut ties.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. Well made. Yeah, Brandon Innes. We'll see how he gets on. It'll be super interesting also to see what happens at USF. Now, we obviously touched on Brian Hartline being such a good coach and such a good recruiter. How do you see that playing out in a market? So Florida is a state where all the teams have money. Let's be honest, all the teams have money. USF had a really good, certainly first 3 quarters of the season last year. The profile is fairly big. How do you think that impacts recruiting of wide receivers to USF? Do you think we start to see higher profile guys go there, and therefore, not that we're saying that people should just follow the coach, but are we going to see some USF wide receivers that were interested for Devy? Because let's be honest, we haven't really been interested in them up until now.
But there have been numerous receivers from the state of Florida, and the big challenge for Brian Hartline, you know, Florida is one of the hotbeds for recruiting college talent. And then those, you know, a significant number of those players go on to make it in the NFL. It'll be his job to convince them that staying in state is the right score, you know, is the right decision. And yeah, it will be interesting to see. It'll be really interesting. It was when he took that job, it surprised me because I felt like he would have had the pick of wherever he wanted to go. So yeah, it did seem like, but it also seemed like a move where he can completely redevelop the program how he wants to develop it. He'll be given that autonomy, and that has got to be appealing for people as well.
Yeah, I think I was almost surprised that Marlon Graham didn't go with him. Yeah. And again, you know, Quincy Porter, another one, like they're going out and they've decided not to go with the coach. So they're 2 guys as well at Notre Dame. Now we've been very critical from a Devy perspective as to how Notre Dame uses their wide receivers, but I think that's changing under a QB I like a lot, and I've mentioned previously in CJ Carr. Obviously, year 2 with him under center, take the training wheels off a little bit and give him 2 highly recruited wide receiver talents to aim for. Because obviously there's not going to be Jeremiah Love, there's not going to be Jadarian Price. So yeah, interesting. Again, what do you make of the prospects for those 2? Yeah, it's interesting because Notre Dame is almost the opposite. If you're helmet scouting wide receivers, you're avoiding the guys that went to Notre Dame. I think Marcus Freeman is building something very different while also respecting the history of Notre Dame being a power bully school, basically in all the right ways and all the good ways. Certainly a hotbed for offensive linemen and running backs coming out of Notre Dame. I think it'll be really interesting to see how the offense develops. CJ Carr appears to be able to make all the throws, and if he's now got a 5-star and a 4-star recruit to throw to, admittedly ones who haven't seen much of the field yet, it can only be a good thing for him to have that kind of talent around him. So yeah, we shall see. And it is interesting, we've landed on Notre Dame because we said we'd feature a school of tight ends. And I think, certainly in my mind, there is no greater tight end school than Notre Dame in recent history for putting tight ends into the league, but also giving us some good fantasy value at the tight end position, which is murky, and we dislike it greatly on this show. We are not proponents of taking multiple tight ends in your Devy leagues, but we want to give some respect to the position. And so we're going to look at the tight ends that have come out of Notre Dame into the NFL. 2011. So in 2011, you had Carl Rudolph go in the second round, pick number 43 to the Minnesota Vikings. He's a guy who would have been on many fantasy rosters for a long time. He was a productive tight end in Minnesota for several years. 2013, Tyler Eifert went in the first round, pick number 21 to the Cincinnati Bengals. 2014, Troy Nicholas went in the second round, pick number 52 to the Arizona Cardinals. 2015, Ben Koyak, 7th round, 229th pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then it picks up a little bit. We've got Durham Smythe still in the league, round 4, pick 123 to the Dolphins. Elise Mack, 7th round pick, 231 to the Saints. And then we have a run of guys that you've definitely heard of. So Cole Kmet, 2nd round pick, pick number 43 to the Bears. Then in 2021, Tommy Tremble went in the 3rd round, pick 83 to the Carolina Panthers. 2023, in my eyes, the biggest tight end prospect that has been let down the most, Michael Mayer, 2nd round pick number 35, a top 40 pick to the Las Vegas Raiders, who then took a shine to one Brock Bowers, which is fair enough. It's just a shame.
Yeah, I think we'll forgive him that one, won't we?
It's a shame that Michael Mayer is still with the Raiders. He could be thriving as somebody else's tight end one. And then 2025, Mitchell Evans, 5th round pick 163 to the Panthers, a guy who was really productive in college and I think is primed for a breakout. The Panthers have quite a few tight ends, though, so he's got some work to do. Those are your tight ends that have come out of Notre Dame, and they are known primarily for offensive linemen. I will give them that credit. They've produced some incredible offensive linemen for the NFL, but that shows there's some high picks there. There's some consistency over that kind of 15-year period. With the landscape of tight ends changing in the NFL, how do you think we can view tight ends? Is there a trend towards more pass catching, less well-rounded tight ends making it to the league? And does that impact your view of Notre Dame, who have produced tight ends who can kind of do it all? They don't have a reputation for producing the athletic Kyle Pitts type players. If you're a tight end at Notre Dame, you're doing the dirty work.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've long said, haven't we, you've got to be able to do enough of that to see the field. However, this isn't about building an NFL team. This is about building a fantasy team. And I think I would prefer game breakers. I'm looking for the F-types. I'm looking for the Harold Fannings that are putting up the gaudy college numbers, because I think we're even starting to see that the competition level in that position isn't always the biggest benefactor. It really, really is about the stats they're putting up that seem to translate. Again, Oronde Gadsden is another great example. Like, we talked about him a lot as this kind of power slot type guy, and would it translate? And there he is, a day 3 pick, and I think his lack of production down the stretch was more a case of the Chargers being badly battered and bruised just about everywhere, rather than anything Gadsden did. It still turns my stomach, the thought of taking one and pinning my hat to them in a Devy draft, because it's simple. The fact is that we're still looking a lot of the time at a late production breakout. A lot of the guys break out in their final year before they really kind of do anything. Take Tyler Warren, for example, was basically, nobody had heard of him, until that final season when he got the opportunity to play at Penn State. Again, Kenyon Sadiq before this season, he was being banded around as tight end 1 before he'd really done a great deal of the job at Oregon. But again, that's a bet on traits, and that's a bet on the way that things are moving for the position. Eli Stowers is a polarizing prospect because the blocking's borderline non-existent. But if you're looking for the guy who could make the biggest fantasy football impact as that kind of F-line split out wide receiver type prospect, Eli Stowers again could be the pick this year. And respectfully to the guys currently in college, I don't think there's any that I am looking at as with that dominant profile that I need to go out and draft right now. I can wait and play my chances. This is a deep tight end class this year. We're taking on a really, really good bunch of tight ends. Take a guy like Jaron Canuck from Oklahoma. Had never played tight end until this season because he was previously a linebacker at Oklahoma. He's going to go day 3, and he's going to be a serviceable pass-catching kind of safety valve tight end who's going to be a decent taxi squad bet, that you can pick up for absolutely nothing. And that to me just seems more beneficial than hanging your hat on drafting an Oscar Delp, or Lawson Lucky. Is that? I mean, how many people is Lawson Lucky going to have ended up burning because people thought they were getting the next Brock Bowers? It just seems like a position where people are calling it the golden age of the tight end, aren't they? Because we're seeing guys who can be difference makers for fantasy football. But I don't think it's changing the need to draft them in, Devy.
Yeah. I don't think either of us are ever going to change. Well, something drastic would have to change. Maybe the league having 4 times scoring for the tight end for us to consider it, because it's such a volatile position that is dependent on, like you say, traits and development and timing of breakout, but also what is the NFL franchise that they're going to? How are they set up? How do they use tight ends? What do they want to do with their tight ends? And I think that is partly why I would say that Notre Dame is trending away from being a fantasy goldmine for tight ends. I think they have produced a lot of really good tight ends for the NFL, and they probably will continue to do so. Whether they are going to be the fantasy assets that we need them to be, I'm not so sure, because they are producing guys that will get on the field but will not be used and will not break out of that blocking lineup. I think we're going to continue to see Notre Dame tight ends develop well, have good careers in the NFL.
Yep,
but whether they're going to be fancy assets, I'm not sure. Now, we had to do a tight end segment because we have some fans on the show who absolutely love a tight end. But helmet scouting is particularly dangerous at the tight end position because it's such a volatile position for projecting to the NFL. And like we've just said, offenses in the NFL are changing so much, and so are offenses in college, that whether your productive tight end in college makes it to the NFL and therefore keeps their tight end eligibility. That is the other problem that we have with some of these guys. You mentioned De'Ron Gadsden. There was a real chance that he was going to lose his tag going to the NFL because he played so much. He lined up so much in a wide receiver slot position, basically. There was a debate over it. So it's making it even more murky for me and players that it's just a position I'm going to avoid at all costs in Devy.
Yeah, same. And I mean, just for context, like in this draft class, I'm going to be really clear. There are tight ends that I like. I like Joe Royer at Cincinnati. I like Justin Joly from NC State. I like. I'm going down my list here. Tanner Kurziol at Houston. These are all guys that I will happily take swings on in my depleted drafts. But I just posed the question: as much as I like those prospects, all right, let's talk higher the top end rather than me throwing deep dives out there. Let's talk Michael Trigg, a guy who has been a name we've known in campus to Canton circles and Devy circles for a long time at Baylor. Like, I like all these guys and I can see a future for them, but would I have taken any of them with even a late round Devy pick when I can take a bet on? That's where I picked up a lot of Fernando Mendoza this year. Yeah, in that kind of last round 4, round 5. Do I want that tight end, or do I want to take a swing on that profile? The year before, that's where we were saying, go and take a gamble on Cam Ward there. Like, the risk reward when I can still get that tight end or one of those tight ends in my depleted draft, it's a no-brainer to me. It's a no-brainer. So as much as I like the prospects, and I think there are going to be several pass-catching tight ends who make a lot of fantasy managers happy for a very long time this year, you don't need to draft them in Devy.
Yeah, and I would even argue, even if there's prospects that you love, it's not worth, like, value-wise, it's not worth taking them. Let somebody else take them, trade for them if they do develop and they do show the production and traits that you want to see. But the risk is of a absolute flame out is so high at that position. So even if you love them,
exactly. And what you do is you sit in your league chats and you talk up every tight end you can think of in the hope that everyone else takes the plunge. Honestly, I sit, and when the pick comes through on Sleeper, I laugh. I belly laugh when someone has left a player on the board, whether and they've taken a tight end instead, because you can just scoop up value that's got a better chance and still find a tight end probably just as good later on.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. There's some kind of pitfalls and spikes in helmet scouting. There is profit to be made from helmet scouting, whether that is you leaning on some biases and really digging into why a university has been able to produce a certain caliber of players. We looked at Ohio State and the coaching there. So if you want to lean on those statistics, have a look at who has been recruited and who's coming in, but also maybe what happens at USF as Brian Hartline starts to reshape that program. But there's also definitely benefits to taking advantage of other people blindly helmet scouting and being interested in one of your players just because they went to a particular school that have also produced somebody else. So thinking particularly about those day 2 draft picks in the NFL that give your Devy squad players a bit of a boost in value, there's a real opportunity to ship them off at that point when people are in like rookie fever anyway, but especially if they get day 2 draft capital. Even day 3 can give them a boost, but I'm very much looking to sell players that have got day 2 draft capital for a profit.
Without a doubt.
Well, there you have it. There is our helmet scouting episode. If you've got any questions on the back of it, please do hit us up in the YouTube comments or on X. You can, of course, find both of us on there at PoshPlayersFF or at JackCDCTT. Make sure you get in touch about a CFF best ball place or a Devy roster MOT if you are able and willing to contribute to my fundraising campaign. And of course, make sure you are following the whole crew at Dynasty Hotseat on YouTube and on X. On that note, we will catch you in a couple of weeks' time.
Peace.